This week we have Altin Sencalar, and he's teaching you how to hustle hard and to network.
Altin McCain.
My name is Martin McCain.
And we are here teaching you how to build your best musical life through transformational interviews,
performance content,
and educational tips. Altin, wow, you trained him well. You did a good job, Martin.
Yeah, you can't say that he doesn't listen to Rick Ross every morning. I mean, he's hustling hard. It's just absolutely amazing, and we know you're going to be super inspired by this. Hello, everyone. We want to thank you guys for coming out, and you're in for a great treat. We have Altin Sencalar, jazz trombonist extraordinaire, with us. I've known Altin since he was 18 years old, and just seeing him grow into like this beast, go-getter. He's like all over the place, educator, recording artist, and he's all the things. Altin, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, and thanks for tolerating me at 18.
Okay.
Well, that's like the awesome thing about being a teacher, because you get to see people just sprout, and you just never know what they're going to do when you first meet them. And you are definitely the cat who has done all the right things. I mean, even from undergrad, I mean, you were being very professional, and it's paying mad dividends right now. And so, congratulations with all your success. And so you're starting a brand new job, right? You just got hired. Tell our audience about that.
So I guess to like back up, I'm originally from Central Texas, Temple to be specific, and I actually took lessons with the professor that just retired. His name was James Whitus, and I took lessons from him for like a couple like months whenever I was starting to audition for undergraduate schools. And he just retired this year, and so I'm actually taking over his job as the trombone professor and the jazz ensemble director of jazz ensembles, I should say.
Wow, that's so awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Especially taking like the place of your own teacher. I mean, man, that's killing.
Yeah, it's definitely a full circle moment.
So can you tell them, like, did you get invited, or you can drop as many secrets as you feel comfortable with?
So a couple things. I'm somebody who's like always looking for like, oh, what's this? Like I can spend hours on like the higher ed job site.
Oh,
through all of them. Right. And so it's funny because social media is becoming is a huge thing. It's not becoming, it's here. And so, I'm friends with Professor Whitus, and he had announced I'm retiring this year. I'm going to stay on as an adjunct to like observe teachers that UMHB does for like their music ed program because it's fantastic. And I said, oh man, cool. I wonder if they're actually going to like expand a job. And so I was just looking through, and I saw a couple of jobs on there. One of them was the the director of instrumental studies, and so I actually originally auditioned for that job because at my last job, I was promoted to that position. However, with all the budget cuts, they just didn't have room. So I decided to resign just so, I wouldn't potentially get cut kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that way I could plan for like another source of income. And so I auditioned for the instrumental director position because it was a visiting assistant professorship, and I actually didn't get it. And so I got an email later from the director of or the department chair, and he let me know that there was another position open for a general brass position. And it turns out they have like 3 brass positions, tuba, euphonium, trombone, and then trumpet. And I think they already have a French horn professor. And so those 3 were open now. And so I sent in my cover letter again, redid that, and then I got, I guess, through to the next round, and I was interviewed. And it's funny because I always, like I said, I always like snooping and like doing like Facebook, looking it up and everything. And so my department chair's kids actually went to the same elementary school that I did.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, okay, find a way to like relate to him personally because, at the end of the day, like, even though we're work colleagues, we still have to be good human beings. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I got to figure out like how to really like, talk with him to like let him know that like I'm here for the community as well. And so he was like, yeah, so, where are you from in the interview? And I was like, oh, I'm actually from Temple. I, started from Kennedy Powell all the way through Temple High School. And of course that sparked the conversation to where we could like make a personal connection. Because, that's like really important to like be really good with your colleagues, because then you have support, both professionally and personally. And so we sparked the conversation. I was like super anxious for like a week, and then I got a phone call. I was like, man, I don't know, like, is this guy gonna like call me? No, probably not. Why do they like need to call me? Like, there's tons of other cats out here. And so because of that, I got a phone call like Thursday at like 6:30 p.m. and I was like, Temple, Texas area code. Okay. And so picked up the phone, offered me the gig, and immediately I was like, yes. So, that was kind of like where that was like basically step A to where I am now.
Wow.
That's awesome. So you applied for a position that you didn't get, and then that turned into like an opportunity to get another position from the same university. That's awesome.
And it's actually funny because the guy who got the position is Michael Grossi, who's the conductor for brass band of Battle Creek.
Wow.
And I was actually supposed to sub for them a couple years ago, but I was in Florida on tour with Rodney Whitaker. And so I was like, oh man, we almost met each other. And he was like, oh, you're a Michigander. And I was like, yeah, the mitten. Oh. We were just making a joke. He was like, oh yeah, I live in Florida, man. I don't mess with all that.
That is so cool. Man, you dropped like the whole interview in just explaining how you got the job. I love what you're saying about personal connections and being a good person. I mean,
the hustle.
Goodness, it's like, and we're done. Just go rewind and listen to all that.
Like the hustle it's so important to me. Whenever I was coming up here, I was really fortunate to have had like really some fantastic mentors. I mean, I truly have been like really spoiled. It started with Freddie, then Dr. McCain, then it moved on to Andre Hayward, Paul Deemer, Elias Hasslinger, then eventually to Michael Dees and Rodney Whitaker, and now I'm actually I was been studying with Elliot Mason a little bit, as well as like Vince Gardner, and like trying to make those bigger connections. And it's just been like one thing after the other, and I see it as almost like a way for you to establish yourself as like I guess known like in different worlds within the U.S. if that makes sense. Like just trying to make connections, because it's true, the music world is super small. And, the more people the more people who are there for you, especially like whenever like you appreciate them. Absolutely. And I like appreciated all my mentors as much as possible.
Definitely. And that's awesome because, a lot of people would say that, man, he's living the dream, but you're pretty much continuing your education too. Like you're still reaching out to, to people, like, you're reaching out to newer mentors. That's amazing, man. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. How about we talk about that a little bit? So, we have an audience that's a lot of young professionals, some current students. Like, let's talk about mentorship and, what if somebody's thinking, well, that's great, you had all those mentors, but I don't have any. Like, what would you say to a young student or somebody just budding in the career? Like, how can they get some if they think they don't have any, or where should they start?
Sure. So number one, I'm like probably the most annoying person whenever it comes to like texting people back, calling people, emailing people. And like, there's a fine line between annoying and hungry. Okay. And I teeter that line probably every day. But personally, I'm really about like making a connection with somebody that you look up to. And it was really reinforced for me whenever I started grad school, because as a graduate assistant up there, you're essentially like an adjunct faculty member. I was the instructor or the TA at times for the improvisation class for the freshman class, along with the Big Band 3 associate director and all that stuff. You're basically doing an adjunct faculty member's position. And I think mentorship comes down to, two things. Like, are you looking for a mentor that's going to be not only honest with you, but like who's there for your literal best interest? And then the second part of that is like, are you looking for a mentor that's not really going to mentor you, but just tell you you're doing everything perfect, and that's like a fine line, because, you need TLC, like you can't have L without T and C and so forth. And so like whenever I was up at Michigan State where I did my graduate work, I was told by Rodney Whitaker and multiple people, but like I really remember this Rodney conversation. He said you should have 3 mentors at all times in your life. One of them who's, within a 5 to 10 year span. One of them who's like 20 to 25. And then, you should like have like a legendary career that you like want to aspire to. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times I think we get, excuse me, a lot of times I feel like we get a little hyper focused on like my own path and whatnot. But like the thing is, you can't really recognize your own path until you know like what a path really looks like, such as like a JJ Johnson career. Mm-hmm. So like to me, like I love JJ. JJ's like the ultimate master to me. And so a lot of things that I like want to do is like what JJ's done. Like I want a big band record. I want a quartet record. I want to be endorsed kind of thing. And so like, it's important to like recognize, number one, like somebody who's on that same path that you want. Number 2, somebody who also is on the same path, but on a different instrument. And number 3, somebody who has lived that life or is living that life currently. Mm-hmm. And it's an investment. Like this stuff isn't free either. Like, you're basically from the start of your freshman year to, there's like not really it's a nonstop investment.
Right. It's your whole life. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't spend 3 hours on the horn to see the end of practicing days. I do it so that way I can have more fun on practicing days.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
He recapped some really good things. Yeah. So I like the 5 to 10, 20, and then, a legendary. So that's almost like you need a big bro, big sis. Mm-hmm. You need a parent and you need a grandparent. Okay. Oh, well, musically speaking, that's exactly what you just said, basically.
But, normally it turns into that. Cause like my mentors, I look at all my mentors, who past and present, as still like mentors. But like for me right now, I talk to Professor Dees and Andre Hayward 3 times a week. Wow. I really make sure. I talk to Dr. McCain at least once a month. I really try to make sure that like I'm both like keeping the connection, and that's not even for like a selfish reason. Like that's just to make sure that like you're checking in with your people. Like that's super important, especially in present day. Man.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in present day. You almost have to do it.
Yeah. And so, like I'm all about taking time for like phone calls. Like, my wife will probably like be really annoyed at this, but like anytime I like jump in the car, I instantly like call somebody. Check in, like when's the next time you're going to have that opportunity of just sitting in traffic? And at least in Austin, like even with a pandemic, there's traffic.
Yeah, definitely.
So you got to check in with your people.
That's good. Check in with your people. Did you guys hear that? Yeah.
I want to rewind because I know about you, but of course our audience probably doesn't. So you play euphonium too. Like, did you start euphonium before trombone, and you still perform it? Like, I know you've won some jazz competitions on euphonium, which some people are like, is that a thing? They don't know about the Rich Matsons, but tell us about your euphonium stuff.
Yeah, so I was actually going to be a euphonium performance degree major before I was ever going to be a trombone major. And it was really because of 2 things. So I guess like rewinding, like my aunt and uncle have been band directors in Texas for 27 years. Mm-hmm. And band director life in Texas is a whole nother thing. Like, I love all my other states, but there's something about like a Texas band director that's just like exaggerated. I say that as somebody who grew up in the culture. And so, my aunt actually has this. Oh man, I'm like 26, so it's probably like 23 years old. It's a 23-year-old picture of me like playing, like puffing my cheeks to play a euphonium. And so it just basically started with that. Like, wow. I was always surrounded around music because my family, at least in Temple, Texas, where I grew up, we all lived like a mile apart. Like my house, my uncle's house, my aunt's house. There was no privacy. I'm the oldest of 15 cousins. Like, people know what a euphonium sounds like and what a trombone sounds like. Everybody in my family. So, and all my other cousins did it too, along with my aunt. So, I can't tell you how many times a week I was over at my aunt's house just hacking through Remington, just trying to get it together. And really what inspired me to go into trombone playing was I was in 6th grade and I was like, okay, I can play euphonium, I thought I could. And I was in 6th grade. They had jazz band tryouts. I was like, oh man, I've heard of Maynard Ferguson. I want to do that. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so I learned the jazz band music. I basically forced like this 8th grader to like teach me all these positions now. Like I need to know this now. And so the next day I auditioned and I got in.
Wow.
And so it really just kind of started as like I just want to do jazz band kind of thing. And honestly, I was not very serious about trombone probably until like my senior year of high school. And it was really because Temple High School, has a fantastic jazz program. And so we did essentially Ellington. And so up to that, I mean, I really hadn't thought about trombone. I mean, the summer before that, I had studied at Tanglewood with Mike Roylance, doing a euphonium and, doing the Tanglewood thing. And it was amazing. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to study with Mike Roylance. I absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I met Elliot Mason at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And he was like, "Oh, you're going to do the jam session?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." He was like, "Man, let me help you out." And that's like right there to me, like that's just like what stole my heart. Was like somebody was just like, "Let's work together. I don't even know you, but I love this music enough to make sure that you love this music too."
Wow.
And that's something to me that is like stuck out the entirety of my life. And I actually got to tell him this a couple years ago in Ann Arbor. I was like, Elliot, like you're like the reason I joined jazz. And he was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah, it was because of this moment." And not to say it wasn't because of his playing. It was just the mentorship that's there. I firmly believe that mentorship is the key to like love. Like you have to like love what you do, because if not, like are you going to be like cool at the house or like stuff like that. And so I took trombone seriously after that. And like I had marched a season to DCI and I was like, yeah, I really love trombone now.
Trombonists are like such enthusiasts about their instruments too. I mean, you guys like really geek out sometimes. I'm like, whoa.
And so my senior year, I met somebody who played euphonium and trombone, and it was Freddie. And I was like, I'm going to study with you. And I had actually auditioned at a couple of other places, and I don't know if many people know this, but I did not get into anywhere except Texas State. Yeah, I got denied from probably 5 colleges for the music program. I actually got in for the academics, which is funny because my grades were not that great. But Freddie was like, I want to, I'm gonna take you on, and then we met whenever I saw a trombone choir rehearsal. I was like, oh man, this is like cool. I didn't know trombones could sound this good at this frequency. And so I was like, yeah, I want to study here. And so I was able to get in, and I struggled my first year. I mean, it was tough, like there was such an atmosphere for like, you have to get better. Like you can't just stay where you're at. And big fish, little pond to little fish, big pond kind of story. And so, it was just, for me, it was more about like practicing by inspiration instead of intimidation. And that was really tough for me to understand, just because your freshman year is really hard in college. Like you can be a superstar, but emotionally it's just really hard. And so I really learned to love trombone between 17 and 19. That's like whenever I fell in love with it. And so I kept on loving it. And I would just seek out as many opportunities as I could to play in front of people, so that way I could like be told. Because a lot of times I feel like we kind of shy away from our colleagues' opinions because like we don't like want to get roasted,
right.
And like that. But like the thing is, I honestly feel like you have to understand how to take a roast and turn it into like motivation, because like competitions. Some people get roasted. I've been roasted on competitions. Like, nope. Like, you have to like learn how to take people's words and make them, motivational, even if you don't like them.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, I like how you're talking about the roast, because you and your colleague Chris Glassman, you guys gave a master class at ACW on that, right?
Yep. It's called embracing the roast, the slow burn to the music student's success.
Whoa! Say it again. Say it again.
So it's embracing the roast, the slow burn to the music student's success.
Man, you need to submit that everywhere.
Yeah,
that's more than just, trombone. I think all of us can relate to that in some ways, like not wanting to be embarrassed, but at the same time, it does motivate you to go to higher heights too. So that's so cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I have a question because I heard you say, and I don't want to pass over this, that you were denied from many schools. And I think denial is something that musicians have to deal with all the time. So how did you, just give us, you don't have to tell us everything, but just tell us how did you deal with that? Especially like you said, being so young, and how did that not crush you to want to go, be a computer engineer or something?
Well, it did crush me.
Oh,
it definitely did, because I almost didn't go to school. I basically took a lesson, unnamed, took a lesson with somebody who I looked up to, and this was my dream school, unnamed school. And after the lesson, I was basically told, if you think you're getting into my studio, you should be shedding 72 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not possible.
Yeah, that's brutal. Wow.
I had to think about that because I'm like, what? Oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah. And for me, one of my biggest influences was Maynard Ferguson. And it was honestly just because of The Flash. I completely love The Flash. Oh my gosh. And that's another thing. It's okay to love flashy stuff. There's nothing wrong with appreciating it, but that shouldn't be not saying it shouldn't be your end goal, but that shouldn't be your sole purpose of, there's depth to that Flash too. And a lot of people kind of I don't want to say, rag on Maynard, but if you listen to Maynard in the 50s playing bebop, he has an album out with Clifford Brown. That should say enough.
Yeah.
Maynard's bad. But other people saw him for the commercial success that he was. And that's something I catered to for a very long time. I really could not appreciate JJ probably until my graduate school work. Honestly. I absolutely love Frank Rosalito and Carl Fontana. Oh my gosh, don't get me wrong. But, I honestly just could not fathom JJ's depth. Really until I was probably working with Mike Dees, that's something that I started to work towards. But I guess getting back to the original question, whenever that happened to me, I think I stopped practicing for 3 weeks. I was pretty devastated. And so, I kind of picked myself up by my bootstraps, because my mom, I grew up with a single mother. And so, she always told me if you get a scholarship to college, I'm the proudest person in the world. If you just get into college, I'm the proudest person in the world. And I was well, I still have have the ability to reach that first goal. And so whenever Freddie and you heard me, Dr. McCain, that was a godsend, man. I was in a pretty dark place because of what had happened a couple months prior. And so, after that, whenever you get told by your idol at the time, it's not happening, there's not much lower you can go. So you learn how to build yourself up. And, me personally, and this is probably taken the wrong way between the ages of 18 to 21, but sometimes confidence radiates arrogance. And so that's what I had to stick to for a while. So that way I could just be okay with failure. Cause, some people take failure differently. And, I know for me, failure is oh man, here's a quote that I absolutely love from director of artist relations at Yamaha, John Whitman. What is it? Failure is an opportunity to refine.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
And whenever that hit me, whenever I was 22, I was yes. and I probably switched a couple words around, but the essence of that was just wow. I have never heard that out of this man's mouth. And as soon as he said that, I just like transcended to like a whole nother place. I was like, all right, man, I got to deal with this.
Yeah, I love that. Failure is an opportunity to refine. And, I think we all end up where we're supposed to be. So, ending up at Texas State ended up being a great thing for you in the long run. But sometimes we don't think about that, when we have these little detours and stuff. So I think that's really awesome.
Exactly. I want to fast forward just a little bit. Just talk about, because you put out like, a couple of albums. You put out like your first album, like right after you graduated with your bachelor's. Can you just kind of talk about your process with like your first one, and then also like your most recent one with your colleague Chris?
Oh yeah. So I grew up in Temple, right? And my mom has always just been all about, like, she used to go to the old Antones. Like, my mom was like here in the 90s in Austin, and she basically like knew all like the actual spots. And so she would take us. Also my sister, she was actually a phenomenal softball pitcher. And so she used to play club sports down here in Austin because of how much talent there is. And so we used to be in Austin like 3 times a week. No problem. Yeah. And so we were always like, I was always like walking around like Lamar and what is that? Congress, something in that area. I like walk up and down because my sister had like a 3-hour softball practice. I didn't want to sit. I used to like walk by 1-to-1, Zach Theater, and all that stuff, and I would hear music all the time. And I was like, man, I play trombone. There's a trombone player in there. Like, I can do that. And so, I was like, how do you make an album and whatnot? And eventually, like, the thought kind of left because I was like, I need to practice, But whenever I started studying with Andre Hayward, he said something to me. And for people that don't know Andre, like Andre's, he's like one of the finest trombonists in the world. Mm-hmm. But number 2, like he's probably like the nicest human being you'll meet on the bandstand ever.
Absolutely.
He's just no ill will towards anybody, and it's amazing. Like he's literally there. What you see is what you get, and like he's there to make sure that you love this music too. And so he really taught me like how to love playing this music, even though I wasn't happy with like what I was playing sometimes. And so one day he was like, man, like, I think you should make a document. I was like, oh, like a paper? Sure. He was like, no, like a CD. And I was like, really? I guess. Okay. He was like, why? You've played on a couple CDs, and I had like done a couple of session works. I had actually done the Texas State CD my freshman year. Now I remember. And then did a couple like funk CDs and like salsa and actually Tejano was a really big thing for me, like my first 2 years in Austin. But he was like, yeah, you should do it. And this was like right after I like had won a couple competitions and like did like some like the international tuba euphonium stuff. And so I was like, okay, sure. And so I'd always like written tunes and I'd been lucky. I've been performing at the Elephant Room after sneaking in for so long, just to play. The people who know me know like, yep, get him a water and he'll stay in his seat like the entire time. To this day, like that's just like who I am. And so, that's what I was doing. And then finally Mike Mordecai gave me an opportunity on my 21st birthday to play. And so I was like, I'm going to write 3 originals. And so I did. And so I saw this as like an opportunity to like even write even more and like, really play with people that I loved playing with. And so, my senior recital at UT was really more like a dress rehearsal for my album. Mm-hmm. And so what we did was we basically played half of the album on there, so that way I could satisfy the other half for like my degree. And then I had like 2 rehearsals before the CD to go in. And my main thought process was to show a wider palette because, whenever you're 22, I'm sure there's like 22, 21-year-olds who are like really, focused in. But, if you're like presenting a product, like you want to show like that you're versed in different parts of the palette. And, you really start developing your sound, in my opinion, towards like that second album, whenever like you have a producer, you're like a little bit more aware of like the recording process, what works in the studio. Like your first album is probably the most educational experience that you can do as like a capstone project. Seriously, like you learn so much. I learned what chords did not work. I learned what chords worked very well. I learned voicings just through like 2 days of like recording 11 tunes. And so my goal wasn't really to like put out this amazing product per se, to like, it was more about like, well, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So I need to put something out. Like, it was going to be hopefully a good product, which it came out to be. But it was more about just like making sure that I understood that like, this is something that I'm going to have to get comfortable with, even if I like what I play or not. And so first album came out. I was like, okay, cool. This, like, I'd been working a lot in Austin. I was, arguably like playing like probably like the most in the entire town at that point. I mean, I was probably like playing 6 gigs a week. And they were like all different. And like I was leading my band, and it was like, all right, cool. And so I did that. And then I moved to Michigan State. And then I got to study with like my idol, Mike Dees. I was like, man, I want to do this. Like I'd been like following Mike Dees since like 2012. I like took a lesson with him in 2014. I'd like transcribed a couple of his solos. I was like, yeah, I'm going to like study with this cat. And so, we talked about my first album, and it was nice because he was like, man, your first album sounds really good. And I was like, nah, man, stop, and he was like, no, like it's a very good first album, And so the process for my second album was to like take very good for a student to like objectively good, or objectively, as they say, like in music. But, I really wanted his expertise because he's, probably one of the most recorded trombonists out right now, as well as like one of just like the baddest dudes on the horn in general.
Absolutely.
But anyways, so, fast forward a little bit to like my first semester at grad school. I'm like playing a couple gigs in the Detroit area. And I'm like, well, I have a CD, like I should probably tote it around. But the thing is, like, it's kind of hard to do that as a master's student, as a TA, at the time, fiance, and all that stuff. And so I was like, man, I got to like figure something out. And then like my buddy Chris was like, yeah, I'm like doing kind of the same thing, blah, blah, blah. We were like, man, like, this kind of sucks. Like, we're not like playing. And so, him and I were like, not intentionally, but we were just like neck and neck competing all the time, because we were like the two TAs and, just like trying to, I guess, cut our teeth per se. And so I had the opportunity to like be a guest artist for like this thing called Jazz Tuesdays, which is like the feature artist of that week in mid-Michigan. And I got asked like, hey, the Lansing Journal is going to be here to like document this. So like, bring something good. I was like, okay. And so, Chris is kind of a rarity. He's like, I've never heard anybody like really improvise on the bass trombone like him. I mean, he's like, he was like a freak of nature to me at this point. He still is. But I was like, man, we should do something. Cause like we were both shedding Mike D solos and JJ solos. I was like, why not? Like, there's no law against having a 2 trombone quintet. And so it honestly just started as a one-off. It started off as a one-off, and we were like, man, we should do this some more. And I was like, you really think so? And so we were actually slotted to headline the Lansing Jazz Festival. And so we did it. And then Michigan State's really big on like grants. I mean, like you learn how to write a grant. And so we wrote 2 grants and won them consecutively, like back to back. And it was for our quintet to go out and do educational series for inclusion, diversity, and to like promote jazz in schools that probably don't get it. Because Michigan State has this initiative. They have like an endowment, and it's a lot of money. And so we go out to every school in Michigan basically throughout the year, and we do a full week tour with a guest artist, whether it be Steve Davis or Ron Carter or, whoever, like huge names. But that's really only aimed for the high school and middle school students. So we saw a niche here of, well, we should do this at the elementary school level. And so at the time, we were also taking a class that was like psychology of the human ear. And so the reason why we won the grand prize is because we actually backed up our reasoning behind science of psychology. And it was what happened was we basically proved that like jazz music is a heightened sense for like cognitive nerves to to, be made while listening at such a young age. And so we were able to like tour with our group at every single elementary school for a 3-week residency, and we got paid, and we were able to pay cats a good stipend. And then we were like, well, I mean, we're already doing this. Like, we may as well just like make a CD. And our buddy Nathan, who's the guitarist in our group, he's like an expert mixing engineer. Like, this cat won a downbeat with a bootleg version of Logic.
Wow.
Yeah, this cat is bad. Wow. And so we were like, hey man, like, we should just do this, because we've been using him the entire time. And so we talked to Prof D's, and we were like, hey, like, would you produce this? He was like, let me think about it. And I think he was just like making us like want to sweat. Because, like it's like a big deal to like ask somebody to like basically take your vision and like make it correct per se. Mm-hmm. And we were like, you already know both of our playings, like, our weak points, our strong points, like how we are as people. And so he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so we had we had graduated, and then Chris and I were actually on tour for like 3 weeks. So we were on tour playing Wynton Marsalis's Abyssinian Mass with the Gathering Orchestra, with Damian Sneed and Rodney Whitaker conducting, and Karen Clark Sheard, all in Detroit that week. And we were just rehearsing like hours on hours, like rehearsing like these movements. And so the day of our concert, we had to head to the airport to fly out to Japan. And we were on tour for 2 weeks. And we were like, okay, well, we got to write some music. And so I think Chris and I probably wrote like 10 charts separately in Japan and on the plane while we were there for like 2 weeks. And then we flew back. And then I actually had to drive to Iowa to be a guest artist for the International Tuba Euphonium Conference for the Rich Madison tribute. And then 2 days later, we had our session.
Wow. Life of a musician.
Yeah. And so I was like, man, this is like the life. I love this. Absolutely love this. Like, this is like doing stuff that I like want to do. And so we were able to get Rodney Whitaker, who was our mentor, who was also like Kenny Garrett's bassist, Wynton Marsalis's bassist, Roy Hargrove's bassist. I mean, everybody. Mm-hmm. And then we had this cat named Addison Fry, who's like a Monk finalist. So we had like Mike Dees and Rodney as like the veterans who were like really helping us out. And then we had some up and coming musicians such as Nathan on guitar, Addison, and then my buddy Zach Adelman, who's over at Juilliard right now. And so, all of us had been playing together with the exception of Addison, but Addison played with Rodney a lot. So we were like, okay, we can make this work. And Rodney knows how every instrument works with like comping and like bass lines. So we were like, all right, great. And so we had the opportunity to get 4 custom arrangements from Steve Davis, Randy Napoleon, an up-and-coming arranger and composer, Joseph Herbst, and then Jason Hainsworth. Like, so basically 3 of them were heavies, and then 1 of them was a rising star. And then Chris and I wrote 3 tunes apiece that were original. And then we did 2 standards and then another one. And we did a Mike Dees rhythm changes tune. And so we were able to like really compile I don't want to say a complete document, but I would say a well-rounded document that was actually more focused in on bop and hard bop, which is something that Chris and I love. And, that's something that everybody in that session absolutely loves. Like together, we probably transcribed like 100 solos within that era, and that's not even including like Rodney's stuff. So we were like, okay, let's do this. And our main intention was just to put out a good product. It wasn't even to like rebrand trombone or anything like that. It was more just like, we want to put out good music because we've been playing together, and like, we need people to like know that like, what did somebody say? Like the reawakening of trombone, like it's very present. It's not just like a reed and valve thing. Like slides are here too.
I love that. Slides are here too. Man, Altin, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then we just came to like the realization, pun intended, that like this is like a product to like put out. And so we named it Realization, and the artwork is actually by Sun Ra's trombonist, Dick Griffin.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's called Around Midnight. So it was like a complete like tie into everything.
Wow.
That's awesome, man. Like, so where can everybody find Realization?
So we're actually running out of copies, which I'm very surprised about. But we actually, so once again, you learn so much on your first CD. I ordered 500 CDs for my first CD, and I probably have like 200 left. We only ordered 200 this time, and now we have like 20 left.
Okay.
Yeah, so lesson learned.
Yeah, definitely.
But so we have a website, sinclairglassmanquintet.com. We have a store there that you can use. You can also buy it on my website or Chris's website, which mine is altinsencalarmusic.com. His is chrisglassmanmusic.com. We also have an Instagram, Facebook, and we've actually been in a couple publications recently to where they like give all the links to buy stuff as well. And we're Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff.
Awesome. We'll have all the tags in our show notes. And man, Altin, you made me tired just listening to all the things you did. You said you're 26.
That's crazy. I thought I was
slow down, man.
26.
What are you going to do by the time you're 36? Well, you'll be running the world by then. Altin for president.
Hopefully be like y'all, man. A full tenured professor? Oh yeah, I really hope I can do that.
All right. Man, I love it. I love the dreams. I love like the, wrestling through failure and then succeeding and then just those messages of hope, and it's just so great. And then having a job, practically right out of school. I mean, still very young to have like a full-time job where you have a position and you kind of have that influence on the next generation, which seems weird to say, but you do even at a young age have that influence. So kudos and bravo to you. Where else can they find you personally if they just want you, not the band?
So I have a couple of things. I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook, I also have my website, which is altinsencalarmusic.com. I actually have a couple of things coming up, some new music to be released. So Chris and I, the band, have 3 singles coming up, but I actually have my own single coming out on Outside of Music's record label, hopefully September 29th. And that's actually going to be my next gig here in Austin, which is going to be the Austin Jazz Society's streaming services that they've been doing. And it's going to be a premiere of like my new single, which is called Reimagined. There's like a lot of RE titles in my last 3 years. But this one's called Reimagined, and it's basically not a culmination, but more of a post-school writing assignment that I like really want to do.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, man, this was such inspiring. Like, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, Altin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be on this series, man, because like y'all have had like some heavy casts. Actually, Courtney Jones was one of the clinicians whenever I was a Yamaha Young Performing Artist winner. I met him.
Oh my gosh.
Muncie at Ball State.
Whoa. Well, come join the ranks. You are already doing amazing things, and I know you're also a heavy hitter too, so congratulations to you. And
thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us on today's episode. You know where to check out Altin, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
I just don't see how he gets all of that accomplished. I mean, he's got like 10 gigs a week, even in COVID. It's crazy.
Exactly. So if you like what you see, make sure you share with your friends.
And subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that little bell so you get the notifications.
Make sure that you also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, @McCain Duo, and also McCainDuo.com.
See you next time.